Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. Today, uh, I'm laughing at myself because I seem to say this a lot in all of our intros. I have a good friend of mine with us. Yeah, surprise, surprise. I tell you what, it makes me not feel lonely. So that's cool. Hey, so I got Frank Sinclair, founder and Chief Experience Officer of Dream Again LLC, which is awesome. Hey, Frank, welcome to the show, man. Glad to have you today.
Thanks, Otis. That's Chief Encouragement Officer,
Chief
by the way.
Encouragement, yes.
Yes.
Hey, my vocabulary is small, and I just knew there was an E in there
Well,
somewhere,
we
man.
hope that they experience encouragement. So both words work.
That's right. That's right. Well, speaking of Dream Again, Frank, I'm curious. What was the catalyst that said I'm going to start my own business and launch out and do this thing?
Well, as I retrace my life and all the things that I've gone through and dealt with in life, and me becoming Frank Sinclair, it became patently obvious to me that influencing people is what I was put on earth to do. And then I saw three of my children become executives in business in Denver. And seeing that happen in my offspring really was the inspiration for me saying, you know what, I need to expose myself to a broader audience of the influence because what my kids had in common with their parents. So we weren't the reason for all of their success, but it certainly isn't coincidental either that three kids become chief executives.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, sorry, Cam. I was tossing it to Camden and he's drinking coffee. But, uh, the other thing I always like to talk to the vets that are on our show is, you spent 8 years in the Air Force, right? I think it was 8 years, right? Yeah. What life lessons did you pull from the Air Force those 8 years? Because that's a good chunk of time that you still use today in business and in life.
Military to me was a foundational part of my life, the discipline that I learned, the collaboration and camaraderie that you learn, thousands of people walking around with the same uniforms on. And, uh, for me, I was single my entire time in the military. So I, that was my family. That's who I hung out with. Those are the people that influenced my behavior for good or for bad. And Otis knows what I'm talking about. I won't go into the bad, but mostly for good. So I learned so many principles of life. I tell people if I went in when I was 18, I left when I was 26, that I became a man while I was in the military.
Frank, what would you say is the biggest single lesson or leadership moment from your time in the Air Force?
Uh, well, uh, on my 7th year in the military, I became the second youngest E6 in the entire Air Force. That was a leadership lesson because I was 25 years old. And I looked like I was 18. So the guys that were working for me were in their 30s and really finding the confidence to know that age doesn't make a leader or experience doesn't necessarily make a leader either. And I found out position doesn't make a leader. And because I had that rank, didn't make me a leader, so I had to learn to be a leader. But I think that was the biggest touch point of my career.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a great area because when you're coming in, young in that kind of position, people think that the title earns you that respect. I could go back to my leadership classes that we reference all the time on here with Dr. Torres. And there's all these different types of leadership elements that you can use inside, as a leader to get people to do what you want them to do, which is really what a leader is all about. And that title leadership of the power of just having that title, people think that's going to be the strongest one out there, but really it might, honestly, and I'm throwing this out, I don't think I've thought about this one all the way through one time before. It might be one of the weaker ones out there as far as just having that title, and there's no automatic guarantee of respect or guarantee of your followers. That I think a lot of people, when they're getting into leadership, think that's going to be one of the stronger forces.
Well, Maxwell says this is absolutely the weakest link or level of leadership. Positional leadership, if you think that you become a leader just by what position you have or what rank you have, then you're deluded.
Hmm.
Because if you look behind you and no one's following you, you're simply taking a walk. And you can take a walk at any rank.
Yeah, that's so true. And of course, in the military, that's the easiest example of it because you get promoted and you wear it, wear it on your sleeve or your collar or wherever, and it says that guy's in charge. And what's really interesting, and I remember years ago, kind of getting taught it, but also seeing it and learning it, is who's really in charge, right? Is it the first sergeant, or is it the company commander or the squadron commander sort of thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we've all been in those sort of organizations, to include in business, right? Is the
Yeah.
CEO in charge, or is it really the director of operations that's truly running the company? And I think that's a great life lessons for everybody uh, to think about. And it kind of leads me towards when you are working with a business, how do you know do you identify that, or does that the person who is the leader but not the true leader come see you? How does that, how have you found that?
Well, some lessons are hard to learn. It's really cultural uh, too, because older people like Otis and myself, and I'm older than Otis. I just want to make sure
Thank you, thank you. Yes, yes,
everybody's
yes, he is. Just want to be clear on that too.
Let's be very clear. I'm the oldest guy on the screen, and but culturally, our culture, top-down leadership was it. You know what? I said it, you do it. That's the end of the argument. It doesn't work anymore, and I'm so glad that it doesn't work anymore. It's an incredibly hard way to lead organizations. So, the lowest guy on the pole can lead up. The guy highest can lead uh, down or sideways as well. We're all called to influence our organization. And when people are empowered at every level to do that, then the person with the title's job becomes so much easier
Mhm.
to do and so much easier to navigate. So people that I interact with, those are the lessons we try to learn. And don't worry about your title. You know what I mean? Because if you're doing what you're supposed to do in your organization, you'll garner the respect, value, all of those things that make leaders leaders will come to you. And if you don't do that, I don't care what title you have, you'll never garner that. And you have a revolving door, an inefficient organization, and one that's eventually doesn't exist.
I think kind of from the like skill set toolbox side of that, one of the best things that you can do as a leader, or even if you're, not the positional leader, but just a leader inside the organization, is to ask questions and make sure you're asking the right questions. Why are we doing this? What do you think about this? And kind of putting people on the spot like that, because one of the things that I think we've talked about before is when you ask people questions, you can take their guard down a lot, to where if you're just telling them things, they'll say, oh, yes, sir, no, sir, whatever their feelings are immediately. They'll have that little litmus test about how they feel about your leadership. But when you're asking them questions, it kind of takes that guard down, and they have to feed you information. And then from there, you can get a much more genuine interaction towards things.
I'll say yes and no, Cam, to that. And yes, from the standpoint, if you've garnered enough trust in your organization, that you're
Mm.
going to get the answers that are really authentic and transparent. No, if you've created a mess in your organization and everyone's scared to step up. So yeah, can work and can't work. So all depends
Good.
on
We
the culture.
we have a little bit too much agreement on the show sometimes, so we can have some dissenting opinions.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, what does leadership mean to you, Frank?
Influence. It's never ever less than that word. You can add different layers to that word, but at the end of the day, is influence. How are you influencing? First of all, human capital and processes and all the things that's involved in business. to move forward, to get over the challenges of business, what I call the discouragement bumps. How are you influencing those places? Because they're inevitable. We're going to get discouraged. It's inevitable that we're going to be challenged. So how do you influence the processes and the humanity through that? So influence is the word for leadership for me.
Yeah, I love it, love it. I always throw out trust. That's the one I always go to for, first off. I'm curious, do you have, who do you model your leadership after?
Probably
Mentor or
Maxwell.
somebody you read, whatever.
Maxwell is probably the greatest influencer of my leadership, but I consider true leadership on earth. Maxwell, I think he just released his 101st book.
Wow.
I'm not a Maxwell coach, but I'm a Maxwell fan, and I have them all.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. What about in community leadership or other areas? Do you have other influencers or mentors that you look towards or bounce things off of?
Oh man, to me, collaboration is Otis and I have talked about this before. Collaboration is what moves business forward because people influence me when they don't even know they are. With their words and their presence and the things that they do and the enthusiasm and those type things. So, from that standpoint, for me, it's too many to say.
Mm.
I've carved out a niche and an influence in this city. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. I'm just saying that was my goal when I started business. I wanted to be the most influential small business guy in this city. That was my goal. And I said, business will fall out of influence. So, so that was my starting point. And since I spent so much energy doing that, Otis, I'd probably leave someone important out if I gave any specific name.
Well, I would say that you have accomplished that goal, Frank. Just seeing your activities around town and how things are working for you, both as an influencer in the city and as a businessman. And well done on establishing that goal, which leads me to my next favorite question is, so if you've accomplished that goal, what's the next one on top of it? What's the follow on?
Oh, I could see in your face you were going to ask that.
You set me up, brother. You set me up.
I did. And I think it's very easy because I think one thing builds on another is to identify great influencers in our city, connect them in the places that they need to be connected so that their influence is valued and embraced. So my job now, in addition to continue to build my platform, is to make sure others' platforms are being built to the greatest degree possible.
To what extent do you think that the social, like a social multiplier effect, plays out inside your goals and in your business?
I think it's the heart, it's the core of who I am and what we do at Dream Again. I'm so absolutely convinced, Cam, that if Cam doesn't make it, somehow I don't. You see, all of this is an effort for us together to create the synergy that we need in a community to explode and prosper together. So every business that I look at from a social impact standpoint, Colorado Springs is one of the greatest social impact cities in America. I don't think we take a backseat to anyone when it comes to our generosity, our ability to give, and uplift organizations and nonprofits and all those type things. So I serve on several boards there, give a lot of energy and time to make sure those things are happening as well.
So something that makes me think of, and I think we can kind of open this up, it should be decently open-ended, is that reminds me a lot of, I talk with a lot of other coaches and things inside rugby about, and especially younger levels, about, they're not all going to be Eagles. They're not all going to play for the USA team. They're not most of them won't even play in college. But it's kind of that replacement factor that I've talked with other coaches about of, I just need, two of them. If I get two of those kids to go play college and one of them winds up coaching, I did my job because I replaced myself inside the system. How do you balance those two ideas? Because I completely agree that you want to help everybody out, and that is where the social multiplier comes from, and you want to raise everybody up, because when we raise everyone up, we keep benefiting each other as we're going. But also, I think there's a little bit of a realism side of that. Maybe it's me being a pessimist for a second, but there's a realism side of that not everyone, whether they don't have the ability or they don't put in the effort or whatever it is, not everyone's going to make it all the time. So how do you two square those?
Why would that even be a measurement?
Sorry, what was that?
Why would that even be a measurement?
A measurement as far as success?
Yeah.
Well, so in terms of them, in sense of their own success, or in sense of broader.
Which success are you trying to pull out of this?
I would say just in the broader.
For you, or for them, or where are we going here?
I would say in the broad sense of success, that whatever measure you would put it out, that here, I'll take a basic economic one here. They're not going to jail. They're not winding up on the street doing drugs, something like that. That basic level. There's going to be some degree of failure with this when we're talking about raising up the entire city or the entire population, whatever degree you want to put that to. So how do we square that type of, failure really, as far as it goes, to the idea that we want to bring everyone else up to have that social multiplier? Because I haven't looked into this too much, but I'd almost guarantee that there's a negative social multiplier on those type of folks as well. If I wind up out on the streets, I could pull my friends with me, and we all wind up in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna try to answer from what I think I hear you saying, because you said a lot there. So,
he was walking that dog around the corner a couple of times, Frank.
He's incredible. I remember talking to him. I was very, very impressed by who he is as a human being. So that's fine. Are you thinking too deeply, Cam?
What's that? Sorry, are you coming through quiet on my laptop?
I say, are you thinking too deeply here?
You can never think too deeply.
Let me try to unwrap what I think I hear you say that. Because success, we keep talking about that. To me, it's just such a subjective word. So what in the world does that mean? If you had a kid that was going to jail and now through your efforts isn't, or finishing school, not going to finish school by your efforts isn't that incredible success? That's a social multiplier. Not the two people that go on to college and play the sport. If that's the measurement, then you're going to be dealing with a whole lot of emotional failure. So what are you investing in, and how is the measurements of success being determined in the work that you do? And that's what I do in business. Joe over here, quite frankly, if I taught Joe how to not be an entrepreneur, that was a social multiplier, because he's not an entrepreneur. He just loves the idea of entrepreneur, right? Entrepreneurship, and his family's suffering and everything else is suffering. He's not adding anything to the community. He's continually discouraged and disappointed. And I have no problem with that whatsoever, by the way. Joe, not your space. Go get a job. Take care of your family. Let's do that. Does that feel like a success for me? No. Joe's still spending money in the community, taking care of his wife, bringing forth a healthy organism that's going to add to our society instead of take away, and et cetera. So it has to be broad and big picture when we're talking about social multiplying, right? And it can't be within our little spheres, our own boxes, but we limit the opportunity for success.
I
That's
think
a lot of
that
work.
makes a lot of sense because when you think about it, just to take one of the examples there of somebody who wasn't going to graduate high school and whether it's a program or whatever it is, and you help them do that, then that little step can do so much in their life, and then that can help them to impact others around them. I totally agree with that. I enjoy that broad definition of success because then when you get more pinpointed on things, you can really be I think really more positive in a sense of instead of looking at this big thing that not everyone's hitting, you can look at it a little bit broader and say, oh, well, if we help this guy graduate high school, then he's going to go have a better life. He'll be spending money in the community, yada, yada, yada from there.
You know what, Cam? Something even more important happens in that process. Cam McGregor continues to show up fully himself because the drags to you and your business is carrying the weight and responsibilities of everyone else's movement. And if you're doing that, then I guarantee you will rarely show up fully because there's too much energy expended there. So you do them a favor and yourself a favor. Recognize putting in the work ahead of time, determining what steps looks like success for this person, doing all you can to get them there, and when they don't take it personally.
And I'd say even trying to bring that back full circle to the original rugby example, there's a lot of kids out there that I go coach, especially my younger ones, where success for them is being active when they're out there playing rugby. That's success for them. They're never going to go out and be an all-star. And that's not a knock on them. It's just, that's not their cup of tea. They're out there having fun. They're out there. Maybe they learned about leadership from me. Maybe they learned about heart. Maybe they learned about passion, but that's their measure of success, not whether or not they go play rugby for U of A.
Absolutely. Always make it about them and not about you. And then you always continue to have the resources you need to show up for them.
I think that's a great point because one thing I think we've done, and sorry, I don't know the psychological or the sociological depth of it, but we tend to put in our mind a keeping up with the Joneses sort of attitude and try to measure our own success by somebody else's. And I think that lesson, if you're teaching the kids that at that young age, that you're engaged kids, that's an unbelievable place for them to start. Because I be frank right here, and I honestly catch myself doing that and going, oh man, man, I wish but you know what? That's not me over there.
No.
This is me, and I define my success. Frank defines his success. Cam defines his success. And that's what I think that's the thing to take and put and teach, especially when you're talking about your kids at Engage.
Oh yeah. What's that? I love this term, and I think I'm pulling it from one of my economics books at some point, but the Freebird Effect. And I love it because it's Freebird, got to work in that Leonard Skinner reference, right? But the Freebird Effect, they're talking about guitarists, how everyone sees Leonard Skinner up there playing Freebird, and they go, oh my gosh, I got to get me a guitar. Oh, wow, I got to start playing. And then you sit there and you're practicing, you're playing your hot cross buns, and you're listening to Freebird. And most of those kids wind up quitting. And I'm one that was like that. I could still play Smoke on the Water. That's about it though, but I was listening to Freebird the whole time. And when you're listening to Freebird the whole time, while you're trying to play hot cross buns, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be enjoying yourself because you're too busy looking at something that's so far ahead of you instead of focusing on where you're at and what success means for you right there.
I so agree, Cam. I wrote an article, just a little blog just the other day, and part of it is simply this: we're all jacked up. I mean, and people say, "Oh man, that's not a great base to start from." It's an amazing base to start from. Look at humanity. I don't have to go any further than the mirror every morning to realize that this is a jacked up human being able to going out in the midst of other people that are jacked up too, right? And one of the greatest things that we do as humans, we compare our jacked upness to other people's jacked upness so that we can feel a little bit better about how jacked up we're not. Right?
Oh yeah.
right? But if we start from it's just human. It's all it is. We have different environments, experiences, all of those things that make us who we are. At the end of the day, I don't care how good that was done, you're still jacked up. It's just the truth. You really are. That's the space of humanity. And it really moves me forward because, man, I look at people when people are angry. I don't get angry or in return. You know what my first thought is for an angry human? Is they must have some incredible pain going on. To lash out to that degree, to be that mad and that explosive, I, I wonder what the backstory is. I wonder what they've gone through. I wonder what's happened in their lives that would bring them to this place right now. And the natural thing is that we want to engage that because one of the more reasons that we're jacked up is because we love being right.
That's true. That's true.
We
It's like,
do.
yeah.
We love it. And we hate the fact somehow it diminishes us to be wrong or to even consider a space of wrongness. So for me, I'm very comfortable being wrong. So knowing I'm jacked up, being comfortable being wrong are things that really help me to show up every day and not expend a whole lot of energy in the other mess.
Yeah, I love that. Being comfortable being wrong. I think we've touched on that in different ways, but I love that phrasing right there because we're wrong so much. We talk about deliberate practice, how the best way to get better is deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is tiring because it's where you put yourself outside your comfort zone and intentionally fail over and over and over again so you can get better.
Yeah. 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 And I
Yeah.
practice
Well,
that. Go ahead, Otis.
well, I was just going to say the whole thing of being jacked up and admitting that leads you to that. Well, how do I unjack up myself? Since we're making up jacked words, jacked up in this, and then unjacked up myself. I think we're doing good, Frank. But how do I do that? How do I make myself less jacked up tomorrow? Right? It's that mindset of get better, get better, get better. Admit that yesterday, and I've thrown this at a couple of clients in recent past. Like, hey man, we had a pretty good week. We had a pretty good week. Great, things are going well. Okay, so if that happens again next week, is that okay? Will it still be a pretty good week? And what if it happens the week after that, and the week after that, and the week after that? Is it still pretty good? Because if you're not doing something to change and improve, then depending on what you label it, you can label it as jacked upness, or you can label it as pretty good. And pretty good, starts off as a B plus, and then becomes a B and just keeps on dropping down as everybody else keeps going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when I talk about jacked upness stuff, we have to be very careful that we just don't use that relative to business. Because the core state of a human is jacked up. So think about it. I can be sad, happy, discouraged, encouraged, full of life, down in the dumps, and this is 1 hour. Right? I can go through all of that. That's pretty jacked up.
Mm-hmm.
To experience all those range of emotions that we experience as people. And if we can just say, you know what, that's okay. I'm a human. Those things going through, where we stop is we stop and overanalyze the discouragement space. And what overanalyzing does, it keeps us there. Because while trying to think of all these ways we can get, why don't you just let that natural space of discouragement in the moment have its way, right? Admit it's there, it's cool, it's all right, I'm discouraged right now. Don't run and pick up 18 books and try to read your way out of discouragement, or jog 19 miles, try to run your way out of discouragement, or go drink yourself out of discouragement. Why can't we just live in that place for a moment and be okay with that? That's where we are. We're going to be out on the other side. We are. it's not always the forward movement of our business or the retraction of our business that determines our success. And if that always is the center, I'm successful. Dream Again doesn't become all that I dreamed that it can be. I don't think it diminishes Frank. Look at all the things that we have absolutely no control over. COVID, other things that could come on earth. And all of us business people are sitting by because our business was our touch point of our success in life. And you couldn't do a darn thing about it. So what do you do then? Do you stop being valuable to life? Do you stop showing up? So let's get rid of the notion that what we do is really the essence of who we are, because it really isn't. At the end of the day, if you become a better who you are, what you do is just a byproduct of that. It becomes better as well.
You know, that reminds me of something, and I actually had this written down a second ago, so I'm glad you came right back around to it, of kind of speaking in a more philosophical sense about this, that there's a different version of ourselves. You know, you could, I guess, depending on where you subscribe your philosophy, it could be, you know, we change every day. It's always a different Camden waking up every morning because I learned from what yesterday's Camden did, or, you know, look at it on a weekly basis, whichever way you want to look at it. But I think in the entrepreneur world, it's important to look at it that way, because then you're able to separate yourself from your business and separate your failures from yourself. Because when you look back on things, and as you're going along this journey, we can all step back and say, oh, well, you know, it's a little business failure and I'm moving forward from it. But when your identity is inside of your business, when it's inside of that project and it doesn't work, that hurts. But you have to take that, let it hurt a little bit, to your point, Frank, and move on to the different version of yourself and be honest about that, because you have to be able to separate that failure from yourself somehow. Otherwise, it's going to just keep eating and eating and eating away at you. I think we've all experienced that at some point in our lives. And if you're able to separate that failure, whether it's the philosophical way, like I'm speaking of now, that, you know, that was a different Camden. That was Camden 6 months ago. You know, now I learned from that. Now I'm stronger because of that. Whatever way you want to think about that, you have to be able to separate that failure from your self-identity, because otherwise it'll just eat away at you and eat away at you.
Yeah. My Dream Again isn't my identity. It just isn't. You know, Get It Together is not my identity. None of the things that I do are the identity of Frank, because this is what I believe, and I see it come to the fore all the time. If you follow the natural progression of your story, your purpose is always unveiled in that. Always. It can't be different, because if you're the only one of you that was put on earth, there has to be a reason for that. There's a specific reason for you. So you live your story to uncover that reason for you. Then you start living that. However how long it takes, you really do. So the failures, to me, are the blocks that you build on. That's why my upcoming book of leveraging a Dream Again, Lessons in Leveraging Your Pain, speaks specifically to that. Because you don't build from success. People say we build on success, but you don't build from success. What I mean, as a person, your failures are what builds you. They really are. Your missteps, all the things that you've done. And when you take those, I was a homeless guy in 1983 here in Colorado Springs, living in Acacia Park. So how do I leverage that? Painful time of my life, right? How do I leverage that for the good of service and the good of humanity? Well, I go mentor people that are going through homelessness, that I've done in the last 12 years. I got street cred. You know what I mean? I got street cred in the homeless community. So I can uplift other human beings in that very space of pain that I came from. And when it's always positioned as service, or how does it help someone else, or how does it bring value to another human being, the overflow is you make money, you garner influence, your business grows, all of that. It has to be, the touch point has to be service. how is this bringing value to another human? Not me, but another human.
That's great. I love the flip of that, you know, because you hear that in business a lot. Tony Robbins talks about how does he put it? Let's see if I can remember. I'm pulling a Camden and I'm messing up the quote. But he talks about, you know, serving it's not your idea, it's what your customer needs, you know, and you think in the business sense that's the right thing. But I love the fact that you've taken that and broadened it out into a social sense of what's my social network, what's my community need of me, and that's a powerful philosophy to live by, and to grow yourself, grow your story into that, as opposed to, well, what do I get out of this? What do I, you know, what's my profit line? What's the return on the ROI on this? No, what do your customers need? What does your community need? And I think that's a great place to live as an individual and to run a business in that same sense, because, you know, social impact. And you mentioned that, you know, your mentoring, and I'm curious with Dream Again, what's your social impact vision? How do you do that? Where are you pushing or focusing your effort, I guess is the right to put it.
Well, the whole point is to create a place where humans get to understand who they are and why they were put here. So that's hard work. It really is. We're talking about a lot of pain revisiting why we are who we are, and then helping people to embrace and grasp why that makes a difference in the now and why that brings value to our world. You know, because people just don't look at themselves as valuable. So that's what Dream Again wants to bring out. I don't believe anyone was given the energy to do what they weren't created to do. That's why people put one foot out of the bed out the other every morning, and then you almost have to drag yourself to work. You know what I mean? And you're going, oh my God, I got to go back there again. And I'm not putting it down. Sometimes we just have to do what we have to do to make it right. Just make life work and etc. So I'm not putting it down. Very few people ever explore. Oh, I wonder, and it's on this big giant ball that we live in. Why am I here? I mean, but this just happenstance that Frank Sinclair happens to be alive in 2020. All the things that are surrounding me, I feel so helpless. I think that's a ridiculous starting point. Feel like you're helpless and not effective in this place. Because if you're here, there's a reason for you being here, and there's an impact that you need to make in the place and time that you're in. We're historical. Did you guys know that? We are. The three of us on this screen, we're historical. 30, 60, 90, 100 years from now, they'll be talking about you and me going through COVID, Black Lives Matters, all this other stuff that's going around. And it's incumbent on you, all three of us, to show up best that we can in this time to move these situations forward. Not whine about it, not cry about it, not sit around and debate about it, but to show up best that we can to move these situations forward. So what are you going to do?
I was going to say, I'll steer that towards, I think it's our first time going into the Stoic side of things for this episode, but that it's your reality. There's no point sitting here and questioning it. That's what you have. So do something with it. Whatever it is that you're meant to do, go and do it. Whatever's in your skill set, go and do it. There's no point sitting here and worrying about everything else that's going on, because it's going to go on no matter what. It's outside your control, or at least aspects of it are outside your control.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a waste of your energy to be mad at those people that are throwing rocks and doing other things on TV. You know, like you're going to run down there and stop them or something like that. I mean, I'm not encouraging it. We all have a feeling that we have to work through, because it's kind of ridiculous to me. And I'm sure I'm speaking for you guys too, some of the stuff that we see happening, the moment we assign some motive to these people's actions, then that becomes judgment. You don't know. The person with the rock in their hand, we have absolutely no idea the backstory there. Something's wrong. Something's painful there. There's something going on. And I know it's hard to transfer that, but it's still the truth. I've done some incredibly stupid things in my life. And I felt the judgment from other human beings about doing those things. No one ever said, gosh, I wonder what happened to Frank. I wonder why he's so inclined to self-sabotage. I wonder why, he allows himself into these hurtful experiences. Humanity's messy, right? And most people don't want to put in the time to deal with that mess. It's just much easier to talk about the mess, stand from afar and say how crappy the mess is, and etc., but not engage.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a mess engager. I'm in it, man.
Well, it's the curiousness of the story, right? I mean, back to what you were talking about earlier, is that anger comes from a pain, and that I want to know your story. I love. I mean, that's all. In my business, that's always been one of my favorite things. Is when I meet people, is to hear their story, why, and then even better for me, I love hearing why their business. What got you? I mean, that's what my first question to you, right? What got you there? I mean, why this business? Because that's my favorite part of anybody's story is their story.
Yep. Yep. And there's only two places that humans can show up. We have to show up cynical, or we show up curious. People that continue to be curious are the people that win.
What this I was gonna say, what this conversation reminds me a lot of is one of my good friends down here in Tucson. He's very much, and this isn't a knock on him, he's very much that type of guy who, he was up till 3 a.m. on YouTube last night, and he learned about the Nazis down in Argentina or whatever. Take whatever random thing going on, and he'll come to me and be like, Cam, man, what are we gonna do about these Nazis in Argentina? And I just think, and I kind of have the reaction you're talking about, Frank, of like, well, are you gonna go down there? What are we gonna, we can talk about it. Hell, I have weird conversations all the time. I don't mind that. But it's, is it really worth us losing sleep over? Is it really worth stressing about? Because, if it's going on down there and it's as crazy as people think it is, well, crap, that sucks. But I don't have anything inside my power to go do that. I'm not going to go fly down to Argentina and solve that problem. All I could do is live right here and do what I can within my power.
Yeah. Or you're extending emotional energy that you could be using for some stuff that's much more productive. Can you imagine if we could retract all the emotional energy that we've blown solving all the problems of the world that we've made no impact on, and channel all that energy into some really good stuff for our own businesses, for improving other humans, and etc. This world would be totally different.
100%. And I think something to build off of that, going back to something earlier, and I think this is a good thing to wrap us up on, is that, we talked a lot about service today. And I think there's no coincidence that people who serve, people who have that strong sense of servitude are generally happier. This is something where if you go into the behavioral science of things, one of the only things that you can really say, how do I get happier? The only things you can really tell somebody is to go serve in their community somewhere. And it's because we have that sense of connectedness. We have that sense of servitude, and we're building on that to where we're kind of almost living vicariously through others. It's not that I feel, you're not in the soup kitchen and you're helping out there. It's not that you were hungry. It's that you're helping someone else who was hungry. And we can kind of get, call it 50% of that feeling. We can take that little bit of emotion out of it, and it makes us feel good. And I really don't think that's any sort of coincidence. I think it's one of those things, kind of getting into that lizard brain stuff we talk about sometimes. That's darn close to a natural progression of living in a society, that we feel good when we help each other. And that's why we live in a society with a bunch of other people instead of out in the mountains.
That was so well said.
Well,
I can be well said every now and then, Frank. Other
every
times it
once in a
goes
while.
around and around and around, but sometimes it's good.
Well, it reminds me of a Stoic quote that I'll paraphrase. The only thing remaining when we're gone is what we've given away. I mean, when you think about it, really, because when you're dead, you're gone. And the only thing that's left is what you've given away. Knowledge, your riches, whatever that you give away, that's the only thing that's remaining. So when you think about that going forward in life, that's a really interesting philosophy. Hey, Frank, man, I really always fun to chat with you, and I appreciate you taking time out. I'm going to shift us to what we learned today, and I'm going to go first this week because I think I gave Camden 2 weeks in a row by accident. That shouldn't happen.
Eventually, we'll start keeping track of this instead of arbitrarily saying that every time.
Well, I make it up every week, so it doesn't matter. But mine, as we always go through the show, it's like, ooh, that one. But you know what nailed it for me, Frank, is we are historical. I love that, man. I just that needs to be a tagline, and we're putting making T-shirts that just say that we are historical, because we are. I mean, think about that. We are historical, and that is a really great way to think about how important it is with everything you do, because you're historical. So thanks for that. Frank, what'd you learn today?
I learned that this is a pretty cool dad and son team right here. I love that. You guys know I love you guys anyway, but both of your input in the whole subject around service and our willingness just to engage and give each other this valuable stuff. So you've given me valuable stuff today to think about, and I'm so honored that you give me an opportunity to be on your show.
Thanks. Camden, how about you?
So I think mine ties into yours pretty well, Dad. I loved what you said, Frank, of the natural progression of your story, because that's something you hear a lot of. Oh, this is the chapter in your book that, it's down. This is the chapter in your book where you talk about working for minimum wage and before your business starts off and like all that kind of stuff. But no one ever talks about the natural progression of your story. That's the other side of that I think is really important, because hell, my book might have a lot more chapters of working at McDonald's than your book did. I think that's just the easiest way to put it right there. Right. And if you start comparing my book to your book, you're going to get upset about it and you're going to start feeling inadequate. But, it's the natural progression of your story. That's what matters.
Thank you.
So, Frank, how can people get in touch with you and learn more about your story and what Dream Again does?
Well, you can reach me. Otis to tell you, I'm always down with coffee. So you can call me, and my number is 719-460-2453. You can go to dreamagainllc.com, go to my calendar, schedule a time, either for a call or an in-person, and we can talk about where you are, where I am, and just do some story swap there. Also, Frank at dreamagainllc.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Frank. Camden, run us out, please.
All right. Thank y'all again for listening to today's show. Special thanks to Frank Sinclair for joining us today, and our sponsors, MASH, Military and Athletic Strength Hemp Oil, and Verbi Virtual Fundraising. You can check out recent episodes of The Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And check out a full archive at thecamandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.